Hello, Nathan. Thank you for calling SmileCare Dental Clinic. How can I help you today?
Hey, so I've been feeling a lot of pain in my teeth since the last visit, and I really don't know what's going on or what to do.
I'm really sorry to hear that you're in pain, Nathan. I see that you had ceramic braces installed about a week ago. Can you tell me a bit more about the pain you're experiencing? Is it a toothache, swelling, or something else?
My teeth has been hurting a lot, and I think it might be because of the braces. I haven't been able to sleep much, so a bit restless and sometimes feverish as well.
I understand how distressing that must be for you, Nathan. It sounds like you might be experiencing some complications related to your braces. Let me help you get an emergency appointment right away. I'll check for the earliest available time for you. One moment, please.
Okay, thanks.
The earliest available appointment we have is at 12 p.m. today. Would that work for you?
Yeah, that was fine for me. Can you book it?
Great. I have your email as hna6300@gmail.com. Is that still correct?
Yeah, that is still correct.
Your appointment is successfully booked for 12 p.m. today, Nathan. We'll see you then. If your pain worsens or you experience any fever before your appointment, please don't hesitate to call us back. Is there anything else I can assist you with?
No, that's all today. Thank you so much. Bye. So what you have just heard is a conversation between me and an AI voice agent built for a dental clinic. This AI receptionist was able to recognize that I'm a returning patient via my phone number, and then it was able to use that to look up some information about me, including my past visit installing ceramic braces a week ago, and also my contact information in terms of my email. And then it was able to use that information to help me really quickly book an emergency appointment right directly into my Google Calendar with some context about the call for reference later as well. 2025 will be the year where businesses will begin to adopt AI voice agents in mass. But what kind of businesses really benefit the most from AI voice agents, right? Well, I believe the businesses who will benefit the most will be ones that already are having to handle a very high volume of calls on a daily basis from customers. And among those businesses, healthcare clinic, specifically dental clinic, is one of the prime examples. Not only because they have to handle calls from new customers coming in, but they also need to handle calls from existing patients who are having issues or want to schedule a follow-up. And because of that, on average, a dental clinic has to handle dozens, if not even hundreds of calls on a daily basis. And that's not even really accounting for more busy periods. Now imagine a receptionist that is available 24/7 that can not only answer questions about the clinic but also be able to know who they are talking to if that's an existing patient, recall past visits from that patient, and then use their contact information from the CRM to seamlessly book an appointment. That's what we are going to build today. And better yet, today I want to show you how to build this project using the Realtime API, the speech-to-speech technology that is set to revolutionize how AI voice agents will work. And we are going to do this in Retell AI, a leading AI voice agent development platform with no code. Let's get into it. So before getting into the build, let's discuss how the Realtime API works, how it differs from the existing approach before, and why it matters, right? So previously, an AI voice agent works through the orchestration of 3 different layers, right? First, we have the speech to text layer. This component basically transcribes the spoken words into text in real time, enabling the AI to basically hear and process the user's input. And then we have the second layer, which is the large language module, or LLM. So once a speech is converted into text, LLMs like GPT, Claude, Gemini come into play. This model will understand the text input, interpret the context given to it, and then generate a meaningful response in text. And finally, we have the text-to-speech layer. This is where the AI will finally translate the text response back into spoken words using text-to-speech technology. And then in 2024, OpenAI released the Realtime API after a very prominent demo with the advanced voice mode of ChatGPT. And so basically, the Realtime API is a speech-to-speech model that accepts voice input and returns voice output. So instead of having to always convert the audio to text and then convert the text back to audio, the Realtime API streams audio inputs and outputs directly in real time, enabling a more seamless and natural conversational experience. And so by leveraging large-scale audio datasets during training, the Realtime API can understand and generate human-like speech patterns, especially taking into considerations the user's emotions and emphasis, things that are usually lost when we translate the audio into text. Not only that, this approach also helps reduce the system latency and enhances the reliability of the system overall by eliminating the need for multiple moving parts, the different models that I showed before, and complex integration between them. This is released 6 months ago. The Realtime API has now become even more capable and accessible to build with for two main reasons. First, the Realtime API had become much cheaper compared to when it first got released, with the latest model updates just last month in December 2024, as you can see right here. And second, the Realtime API is now even supported in no-code AI voice agent development platforms that you might have already been familiar with, such as with Retell AI or VAPI, and that makes the Realtime API easier to build with as well as to manage when we can leverage a lot of the existing functionalities of this AI voice agent platforms. So now let's dive into how I set up this AI voice agent using the Realtime API in Retell. So to use the Realtime API, simply select the model from the list of models over here. And currently we have two options for the Realtime API: GPT-4o Realtime and GPT-4o Mini Realtime, right? And the difference is simply the underlying LLM that is implied in the name. So for GPT-4o Realtime, the underlying LLM of that speech-to-speech model is GPT-4o, whereas the underlying LLM for the GPT-4o Mini Realtime is GPT-4o Mini. Right, and that explains the difference in the cost per minute as well. As you can see, GPT-4o Realtime has a cost per minute of 50 cents, whereas GPT-4o Mini Realtime has a cost per minute of only about 12 cents a minute. Another important thing to note as well is that the cost for using the Realtime API had recently decreased substantially after the last update, as you can see in this email communication from Retell right here. So before this update, the Realtime 4o model costs $1.5 per minute. Now it drops to only 50 cents per minute. So only a third of the previous cost. And then previously the Realtime 4o Mini model doesn't even exist, and so now we have this option over here, which makes the Realtime API much more accessible in terms of cost per usage. Another interesting thing to note here is that even though you see the cost per minute here of the different models, and the Realtime models still cost a lot more compared to the other LLMs. As you can see, GPT-4o here is only 5 cents per minute. GPT-4o Mini is even less than that, much less than that. But that's not really the entire cost that you have to pay. If you pay attention to the cost here, if I select GPT-4o, even though it says 5 cents per minute here, right? You can see that the actual cost per minute is 13 cents per minute. And the reason for that is because if we use GPT-4o, we also need to pay for the voice engine, which is 8 cents per minute, and that adds up to 13 cents per minute, right? And that voice engine is basically the speech conversion, so the speech to text and text to speech. Whereas with the real-time API, as I explained earlier, right, since it's a speech to speech model, you don't see that voice engine cost here anymore, right? And so it's just that one cost, which is the real-time API itself, speech to speech. And so if you actually compare the cost for GPT-4o mini real-time now, the total cost is 12.5 cents. Whereas if we use GPT-4o, right, even though the model, the LLM itself is cheaper, it still requires some more cost for the voice processing. And so because of that, the cost is actually on par now to use the mini version of the real-time API compared to using GPT-4o as the LLM using the orchestration method. While the real-time API is really a breakthrough in terms of technology, in its current form, it still has certain limitations that I think you should be aware of before considering it for a project. So first of all, there's the lack of customization for the voices as well as the LLMs. If we want to use the real-time API, then we must stick with OpenAI models, not just in terms of the LLM, but also in terms of the voices. So as you can see here, when I select the real-time API, I only get access to OpenAI voices, and right now there are only 3 of them. Whereas if I were to say switch to GPT-4o, then I get a lot of different options from 11 Labs as well as PlayHT, and even OpenAI themselves have more options when it's not tailored for the real-time API. And even though these voices are alright, they are not as varied and personally for me not as engaging as voices from say 11 Labs. And if we use the real-time API, then obviously we lose the ability to clone our own voice, which is a really nice capability. And in terms of the cost, even though it has reduced a lot, the cost for the real-time API is still typically higher compared to other LLM options. So for example, if we want to use GPT-4o as like the underlying LLM for our voice agent because it's smarter and more reliable, consistent, if we want to do that with the real-time API, then we gotta pay 50 cents per minute. Whereas if we just use the orchestration method of text-to-speech and speech-to-text, then we only need to pay 13 cents. That being said though, I do expect the cost of the real-time API to be reduced even more compared to the upcoming months and years, because it has been the trends for AI models in general. I mean, just look at how the price have dropped for the real-time API itself in just around 6 months. Another thing to note here as well is that right now the real-time API are only in preview release, meaning that it's basically a beta version, so it might still result in minor technical issues and unreliabilities. But again, this is something that will likely to change really quickly in the upcoming months. Also, for technical reasons, some capabilities of Retell AI are either not available or quite limited when we use the real-time API, like not having the calls being able to be longer than 30 minutes, or the pronunciation dictionary is not supported, speech normalization is not supported, and so on. So that's something to be aware of as well if you want to leverage those capabilities in Retell. So for me personally right now, because of the lack of customization in terms of the LLM and especially the voices, I might not use the real-time API for all my projects. That being said, it's definitely something to still keep an eye on, because I believe that in the long run, speech-to-speech models like the real-time API has a higher ceiling to improve due to its superior technical approach and foundation. And with the real-time API being available as an option on development platforms like Retell, we can now take advantage of the infrastructure that these platforms already provide, like the low-code building experience, like what you are seeing here, the testing capability, performance analytics, billing management, while using the real-time API. These are the things that if we use the real-time API previously, when it's not yet supported, using full custom code, it would take quite a lot of effort to set up. So other than the model configuration that I just showed, it's very similar to other voice agents that you can build on Retell. So first we have the system prompt. So I specify the role of the voice agent here, and down here I also specify the information of the patient that we pull from the CRM. I will walk through this section in more detail later. And then here in the task section, basically describing to the voice agents what it's supposed to do. So especially in the case of an emergency, it should follow the steps by acknowledging their distress, gather information based on what the patient is describing, and then if it's a returning patient, then confirm their previous procedures, because the issue they are facing might be related to a previous procedure. And then we gather some detail about their symptoms. Then we will see if they are willing to come in for an emergency appointment, and if they are, then we are going to run the check availability function to find the earliest available time for an appointment for them. And then we are going to ask whether the time works for them. If it does, then great, we proceed to booking. If not, then we ask the user a time that works for them, and then we run the check availability function again to check for the availability of the user requested time. And then once an available time slot is confirmed, we will proceed to gather the patient's name and email. So if the patient is a returning patient, then we simply need to confirm the email. We don't need to ask for it again because we already have that information from the CRM. We already have that information, so now we simply need to confirm that with the user by spelling it back for them. We already have their name as well, so I think this is a very elegant way to handle contact information. So instead of having to ask the user to provide us with their email, for example, and then making sure that we got the right email, because it's actually one of the harder parts in building a voice agent, is to make sure that it gets names right, it gets email right, it gets phone numbers right, because those information are very important, but they are also quite error prone for voice agents. So in this case, because we already can pull the information about the patient from the database, we simply need to confirm it. The patient simply needs to say yes, that's correct, or no, but most of the time it should be correct, because in reality a business already store their patient's information in a database. So we should be able to make the booking experience more seamless. And then once we have found an available time with the patient, and then we have collected enough information about them, then we go ahead and book the appointment by running the book appointment function. If it's successful, then we simply confirm the booking and reassure the patient that everything is going to be fine. We look forward to seeing them. So down here I also provide some specific guidelines of the conversation that the voice agent should be aware of. An example conversation for them to reference in terms of the style and the tone that we would like to go for. And then some notes here to let the voice agent know how to handle certain detail about the conversation, like how to say the time, or making sure that you don't engage in conversations that are outside of your scope. And then some down here I have some emotional prompting as well to encourage the voice agent to behave, and I will include the prompt in the resources in the description of the video as usual. You can see that I'm referencing the functions to check availability and to book appointment, and those functions can be set up here in the functions section in Retell. One of the really great things about Retell is that they actually support a built-in integration with cow.com, which is a calendar booking infrastructure provider that allows us to seamlessly manage our events on different calendars, including Google Calendar. And so what Retell AI allows us to do is to basically set up these functions to connect to cow.com in a very seamless way. If we don't have this option, which is not the case for a lot of other voice agent platforms. And what we would need to do is to either set up an automation in Make.com or another automation platform like N8N in order to make the API call to cow.com. And then before that, we would also need to process and do some conversion with the date and time, since the way that the user speaks the date and time might be different than what the API requires. For example, when I say today at 12 p.m., right, we would need to manually convert that spoken date time into a real technical date time format that is acceptable by the cow.com API. That is what we would usually have to do, but because Retell AI already support these functions out of the box like this, we simply need to set them up and it would automatically handle all of the operations needed, including the conversion that I mentioned, calling the API and basically returning the response of the availability as well as whether the booking was successful or not. So when we click on setting up this function here, right, then you can see the name of the function, which I reference. I actually updated the name a bit, and then I referenced it in the system prompt on when the voice agent should use this function. And then here I simply input the cow.com API key, the event type ID. I'll show you guys how to find this information later, as well as the time zone of the booking. And then similarly for the book appointment function, we also input similar information with the API key, the event type ID, and the time zone. And then make sure that you reference the right function, the function with the correct name in the system prompt. Right, you gotta make sure that it matches with the functions that you are setting up right here. Okay, so now in order to find the information that we need from cow.com in order to set up the functions in Retell AI, let me show you guys. So here we have the event types. The first information that we would need would be the event type ID, and if we click on an event and if we look at the browser URL section right here, you would see the event type ID here. So that's the first information that you need. Just simply take this information and then bring that back to the event type ID in Retell and just paste it there, right? And then the second piece of information that you need would be the API key. So you can get that by going into settings and going to API keys down here under developer, and then all you need to do is to add an API key to use for your project, and feel free to name this key based on your project and then set the expiration date. And then when you click on save, you will be able to see an API key, and you can simply copy and paste that and then bring that back to Retell AI and put it in the functions, and it should work just fine. Important section that I want to highlight specifically for this voice agent is this patient information section over here. This is where we will define and inject the dynamic variables, which are personal information of the existing patient that call the voice agent, and then we are going to use this information in the prompt to personalize the conversation that the voice agent will have with the patient. So for example here, for example, the first thing down here, we can see that for the welcome message, we are using the name of the user. And here, by the way, in Retell, for dynamic variables, in order to reference them, you simply put them in double curly braces. And so here I'm referencing the name of the patient. As you can hear from the demo call, it said, "Hi Nathan," right? "Hello Nathan," because that's the name of the patient that calls in based on the phone number in the database, Nathan. And then here we are also asking the voice agent to confirm the patient's previous procedures, previous visits, and when it happened, right? Because it might be related to the problem that they are facing. And then finally down here, we are instructing the voice agent to confirm the existing email that we already have of the patient to see if it's correct or not, right? So all the information of the patient that I'm referencing comes from these variables right here. I think this is a very nice way to make the voice agent smarter, to make the conversation even more personal and engaging than it already is when the voice agent knows, or at least seems to know, about the person that is talking to, referencing information about that person in the past. It really helps build that personal relationship that is very important in a lot of service-based businesses, like in this case a dental clinic. Just like in reality, when a receptionist might be familiar with existing clients, existing customers, and they might know certain things, they might greet them by name, they might know certain things about their previous visits. Now AI, with these functionalities, AI can do the same as well. But where do the values for these dynamic variables come from? And how did the voice agent in Retell can retrieve this information immediately when the user calls our voice agent? Because remember, this information can be retrieved using the phone number, right? And the voice agent only know about the phone number when the user actually makes the call. So how does that work exactly? So Retell has this pretty cool feature called an inbound call webhook URL, and this is the part that basically allows us to inject dynamic information about the user into the conversation when an inbound call is received in real life. So this is how it works exactly. When the voice agent receives the inbound call, it's going to basically send the phone number of the caller to the server via webhook, and you can see exactly the URL of where that server is being set up right here. And then once the server receives that information about the phone number of the user, we are going to set up a function to look up the user's information in a CRM, in this case just a simple Google Sheets, and retrieve the information of the user, in this case their name, their email address, and their past visits. And then server is going to send back that information via webhook back to Retell AI, so that our voice agents can take that information and inject it into the prompt as dynamic variables, as you've seen previously. And now, because the voice agent has context, has the information about the user being retrieved from the CRM, it can now have a personalized conversation with the user by referencing those information. So here in the system prompt, again, once the information has been retrieved by the server and sent back in a response to Retell AI, the voice agent will basically fill in those information into these variables, into this value here. So in the example call that I did, right, it would be patient information, name Nathan, email HNA6300, and past visits, install ceramic braces on a certain date. So in order to retrieve this information of the patient when the call happens, we are going to set up a CRM retrieval automation in make.com. So here, this is the automation in make.com. So when the call happens, the server will receive the information via a webhook, and it receives what we care the most about is the from number, which is the number that the patient is calling from in this case. And then next, it is going to basically look up the information of the user in the Google Sheets using the phone number that we received in the previous step. So here is the example CRM database that I created in Google Sheets. And so basically what this step is doing in make.com is that it's looking up the information of the patient using the phone number, and then it gets back all of this information in the row of this particular patient, as you see right here in the response here. That's the information that we are going to get back. And then here I have a very small step that basically gets the current date time in order for the voice agent to have some context about when is the call happening, so that it can say the date and time in a way that is relative. So for example, if today when I'm recording, when I did the call earlier, it was January 14th, and the operation happened on January 7th, right? Then that's why the voice agent said, also I see that you had this operation a week ago, instead of mentioning the specific date, right? So in order to do that, we need to inject the current date time into the voice agent system prompt so that it has knowledge about it. In Retell AI, there's a built-in variable called current time that allows you to do the same thing, but they only support a specific time zone in the west coast of the US, whereas I'm not from there, so I need this extra step in order to make it work properly. And then so finally, once all of the processing is done, we are going to send back all of this information to Retell, also using a webhook response. And here I'm specifying the information that we are giving back to it, including the name, the email, the past visits, and the current date time of when the call is happening. An important caveat that I would like to mention here is that even though for this project I'm only storing the patient's data in a Google Sheets here, it's only for demo purpose. In reality, you will likely need to build a custom integration to make an API call to retrieve this information from an existing secured and compliant patient information system. For the purpose of this demo, I only set this up in a quick way to make it easy to understand and follow for you guys, but in reality, make sure that the system that you are building are compliant with all of the regulations that apply in your market. Also, another quick note here as well is that if you test the agent using a web call, like what we can do here in Retell, is not going to work. The inbound call webhook URL functionality in Retell only works with a real phone number. So you would need to make sure that you have a phone number set up and assigned for this voice agent. And when you make the call to the voice agent using a real phone number, then you should see the information being sent to the server like what you are seeing here. And yeah, that's basically how you can look up the information of existing users and inject them into the prompt to make the conversation more personalized in Retell. And as usual, I will leave the link to the prompt, the functions, and the automations for your reference in the video description below. And that's how you can build an inbound voice agent that can access existing users' information and history using the Realtime API on Retell AI. The Realtime API has a lot of promise and potential to improve AI voice agents using its speech-to-speech architecture. And now that the Realtime API is supported on platforms like Retell AI, it can also take advantage of the platform's very powerful capabilities like built-in integration with cow.com or dynamic variables like what I've shown you guys today in the demo. And I believe that this powerful combination will allow us to build even more high-performing AI voice agents that are easier to personalize and manage, especially as both the Realtime API and Retell AI improve even further in the future. If you have gotten some value from the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me, and it would help keeps me going to keep creating content like this for you guys in the future. And that's it from me today. I will see you guys in the next one. Stay curious and goodbye.